So I'm here with Clappy and Marc and Lasse. We're going to talk about the sort of engineering aspects of improving the Google Fonts collection. So yeah, basically we have this team of designers, and we're trying to improve the perception of quality, or not just the perception, but improve the quality. And we've with a family of with a collection of 800 families, then there's kind of a long tail distribution there, and so there are some things which are sort of on the shoulders of the curve, which we think we can move up into the head if we spend a couple of weeks on them. There's kind of diminishing returns, that you start, if you spend 10 minutes on something, you're not going to get much done. If you spend maybe an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, you get increasing returns on that time. But then at a certain point, you start to see diminishing returns. And so it seems that maybe 2 days is sort of like the peak, and then maybe 3 weeks is sort of where there's then a bit more of a drop off. And so if you spend 3 weeks with a family, you can really you can redraw pretty much everything, because redrawing existing shapes is sort of procedural, and you can clean things up. So at the moment, Jacques and Thomas and Alexei are working on those kinds of aspects. They have one project each for the next couple of weeks, and they're sort of blogging their progress on the mailing list. And we're going to try and pull those things together into an actual sort of Google Fonts blog over the next couple of months. So that's sort of where things are at right now. Then there's the tail of the collection, and so that's where you guys are coming in. And so there's quite a lot of bugs. There's maybe 200 bugs at the moment open on github.com/google/fonts. And there's probably a bunch of other stuff that's just not really been reported, or isn't like a major issue, but something that we could fix up, irrespective of the general design. And so for the first probably for the first month, for the next 4 weeks, we would be looking, I think, at trying to get a GitHub repo with source files for everything that's in Google Fonts, and be able to generate a new version of the binary files that maybe doesn't change anything. It just regenerates them. A lot of the TrueType files in the collection have been done in a pretty nasty process, where an OTF was generated and then converted to TrueType. And because OTF doesn't have true components, then the components are not in the
decomposed.
Yeah, they're decomposed, and so they're not in the TrueType file. And although WAF2 is going to compress that pretty well, it's not ideal. So even if we literally did nothing other than just get the source files and bring them into Glyphs and recompile them, we'd be ahead. We'd also be rerunning the latest version of TTF AutoHint. There are a couple of bugs where there are some fonts with old pre-1.0 versions which mess up printing. So there's some bad problems there. I've actually seen a book run where the book cover was fucked. So that was bad. So yeah, so that's sort of what I think. The first, we've been somewhat looking at these 3-month blocks, and so I think maybe the first month would just be trying to bring everything onto GitHub and having a more standardized base to work with.
You talk about decomposed components. Are these fonts which do not have source files for us to work with?
Almost all of the families we have a VFB for, but it's not. I don't have real insights into what the distribution of quality is like within those sources. So in the Worst case, we have no sources, we just have a TTF file. The next worst case is that we have an OTF file and a TTF file. The next worst case is that we have a VFB, but it's essentially just a VFB representation of an OTF. Yeah. So I think that we're going to need, to do some legwork in terms of getting the files, sorted, and sort of categorized, and then for each sort of category we can take one font through by hand and then look at ways we can script things, something like that. So then the next round, so as I say, I think that's kind of like the first milestone, is just to like have stuff on GitHub, have source files, have things without any changes, but just being able to rebuild it. And then the second stage, so Callappi's put out this checklist on the mailing list. It's in this kind of planning spreadsheet that eventually we'll make public. It's still in kind of a messy state right now. But yeah, my idea is then that that we have this sort of standard process for taking something that was made for US English and extending it to support European and Vietnamese. And so some of the steps in that process can be automated and further than they already have been. And so I think that, yeah, probably, Callappi's going to continue working on that aspect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it sounds like just a case of trying to get everything together into one standardized set with sources so far.
Mm-hmm.
What you described, okay.
So
the level of destructiveness we talked about the other day, but wouldn't it be? Are we trying to refine the stuff to the specs for those fonts, or are we going to standardize them even further? Let's say so that they have certain encodings of certain names and everything's. I'm thinking about like templating here. I'm not thinking about having each family unique, so to speak.
Right. No, so I think that it would probably be good to take one family and try and take it, all the way. And so we already have, maybe 10 families from the team, where they've already, worked on a bunch of 2-day projects, and they're now working on these, 3-week projects. So I think that that's, a good bunch of things to start testing with, where we already got Glyph files for those 10 projects. The Glyph renaming has already been largely done, and we can use those as a small collection to try and drive to an end state. One of the things that's currently under investigation is about the vertical metrics. One of the things that's come out of that is that I see there's potential for rescaling things to have like more standardized visual sizes. The ink on the UPM is drawn arbitrarily. And so you have some fonts like Zapfino or our Tangerine with these very, very tall calligraphic ascenders and descenders. And in the case of Tangerine, it's scaled on the UPM small, so that the vertical metrics are not like too big in proportion to the UPM. And certainly in the past there were clipping problems when fonts were too tall, although it seems now that there's no limit, certainly in web browsers, to how far you can go outside of the UPM. And I think that rescaling things, making this collection more visually standard, could be interesting. I mean, where maybe it's not that everything would have the same X height exactly, but maybe we can look at like the extreme um, cases.
That's kind of the thing that happened with Jamhuri, right? Where we had these two or three too big glyphs, and then that's why the line height is very high, but most of the font is kind of normal.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's good to have a solution, like a way to cope with these things, because we had this discussion, and then someone said, okay, the line height must be this big. That's how the font ends up being hardly readable. So I'm happy to hear that we can handle this now this way.
Yeah, I think so. I think that seems to be like Khaled's fonts. He did his own approach, and his fonts optically are much bigger. By the three Arabic fonts that you worked on following the Google Fonts policies, then the result was what Google asked for, but maybe it wasn't the best thing.
Hmm. Yeah. So how do we get this started? I mean, the macro problem is for me pretty clear. Kind of organize it better, and but I'm still lacking like the concrete ideas how to get started with it.
Okay, so uh, we need to get you guys the Mercurial repository, which has all of these VFD files. Let me just open up a new screen here. Okay. Google Font Directory, the old repo name. And it was on co.google.com. This was archived. Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so it looks like this one Google Font Directory HG. Hang on, I think this has just got the binaries though. I think I remember this repo. Yeah, dump the source. Okay. All right. So I think that probably I need to push my copy of the HD repo, which I don't have on this machine, but I can get this to you guys for Monday. Um, yeah. Um, and so then we have this spreadsheet um, with the planning, and that's going to show us which families we have on GitHub. Let's pull this up. Okay, let me share this again. Okay. Come on. I'm using a Chromebook and it's pretty not powerful.
Is it the current one or the other one?
I think it's fairly current. Chromebook 13 doesn't have a date.
I found the link to. Oh, it's a different doc you've got. Okay.
Oh, you want the link?
I've got the link, I think. Hold on. I found the link. Oh.
Yeah, that's it.
I've got the link. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so yeah, so column O has the GitHub links to the repos for these families. And Libra Franklin on Pablo Impellari's GitHub is yeah, maybe a good one, because it's got like a full set of weights, it's got a pretty big character set, and it's got modern glyph files. So I think this is fairly good, as a reference for how we want things. So yeah, on this sheet we have all the families currently in Google Fonts, and Jung has done a nice job of going through and trying to grab some emails, designer names, emails, and existing GitHub links for a lot of the families. And so basically, yeah, we need to, over the next month, basically like fill this out. Yeah. So do you guys have any questions?
With this conversion process, it seems like it's either going to be us doing it or what you just referred to there as us contacting the original creators of these fonts and seeing if they're interested in doing a conversion. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think that I need to get that data in the spreadsheet, all filled out, so that we have a contact email and a name and potentially a GitHub link for every family, and then we can sort by most common email, and then just maybe go down the list that way and like tick off like the people with the most number of fonts. Again, there's going to be a sort of long tail where there's going to be I don't know, a few dozen people who have one family each, and then there's going to be a couple of dozen people maybe who've got a lot of families. And so I've already reached out to some of the biggest ones, and due to the way the open font license reserved font name works, we sort of do need to tread somewhat carefully. But generally, I think that just converting, like taking the source files, converting the format, it's not such a big deal. And so as long as we're not distributing binary fonts for users, I don't think we have too much of a worry. Hey, Felipe.
Hey, Felipe.
And so it depends on. Sorry, just to finish what I was saying, Felipe. So we're talking about how to get font sources up on GitHub for everything. So I think it depends a little bit on the first step is going to be like contacting the designers and kind of seeing their attitude, because some of them will say, no, I don't want other people to do things. I want to do things myself. Some of them will say, whatever, I don't care. Do whatever you want. And maybe there's something in between where they would say, you can do whatever you want, but keep me posted on binaries that I want to be able to review stuff before it is updated. So I think using spreadsheet is going to be the easiest way to manage that rather than GitHub issues. Yeah. So yeah, Felipe's just joined the call. So Felipe's down in Sao Paulo, and he's been working with me for the last maybe 6 months on Font Bakery. So this is the set of Python tools that have been developed over the last maybe 3 years. And the main thing is the Font Bakery check TTF script, which is now a couple of thousand lines, and it's just a lot of basic font tools, checking things in individual files, in family sets of files, and then with the metadata file that needs to go with the fonts to get into the Google font directory. And Khaled's been kicking the tires on that. And this is basically checking stuff that I found has been problematic. So there's a lot of overlap with existing font linting tools from Apple and Microsoft, and the OTS, OpenType Sanitizer, that's used in Chrome and Firefox. And it integrates with them, so that if you have them installed, at least the Apple and the OTS, it'll run them on the files as well. And yeah, it would be good to, in the next week or two, for you guys to start using that, I think, once we get to the point where we're regenerating stuff. I mean, how do you think that we should go? Do you think that it would be better to just try and work breadth-wise and just try and get everything to the base level where we have a source file on GitHub for everything? Or would you prefer to spend the next week like taking one or two families deeper through the whole process?
Is there maybe also a similar like effort gain equation that kind of that there's a point at which we have a lot of gain, kind of if we could get all the fonts fast to GitHub and run Travis on them, and then to really finish them is more work, and I don't know, it depends. Well, so I'm thinking if we can just make several like phases or steps out of it. So because if we try to work depth first, we may end up in the end with not a lot of fonts on GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
Which may be kind of one of the most interesting things, because if you got these standardized repositories in a way, it's also easier and more effective to apply tooling to them in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not sure if the depth first approach is the best for this situation right now. I'm not sure actually, but probably I don't know. Maybe the depth first cannot touch everything that we want to do. Oh, I'm not sure. Anyone else?
For me personally, I think there should be, we should all agree upon one family where we say this is a lovely standard. Now let's see if we can try and implement this standard, like a basic standard, like just a source file, maybe a few nice little optimizations and touches, and see if we can implement that all to the whole existing library. So that at least then the whole existing library will have sources if we don't have sources, even if they're technically bad sources. And if they're good and we know that we can get more of a return from improving them slightly, then you can go in and refine them individually. So I'd rather have a group of them all standardized to a low standard and then maybe improve on a few of the ravens, as we call them in the document.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was thinking too. So maybe just one good example repository and then trying to get as much as possible into that standard, which is kind of should be a low-hanging fruit standard so that we get the work done. And then we can try to improve over like a lot of fonts. Or kind of
I think that makes sense. I think that if we have 800 Git repos on our hard disks, then we can run scripts against all of them.
Callipy, what's your take on this?
So well, I've been doing this for the last 2 weeks. We still haven't kind of formalized an approach to solving this problem. I actually went depth first with the first 3 families to see how much time it would take and to kind of formalize the checklist, cleanup checklist, to kind of actually see how to kind of standardize what needs to be finished. I think, Dave, we need to also discuss whether the plus standard, as we've kind of we've developed 3 character set standards, and with a lot of the we're going to divide all the families by these 3 character sets, because there are some that don't need to have small caps and lots of other typographic niceties. Mm-hmm. So it'll actually depend on the amount of time will actually depend on what is the scale of updates. And the other thing is that if we are going the route of getting everything on GitHub, and if we consider that a standard, that kind of moves away from the discussions we've been having, because at the moment the lowest standard was getting everything to the plus character set. Mm-hmm. And by default of doing that, it goes on GitHub anyway, because it is a collaborative process, and plus has Vietnamese, so there is Nguyen in Hanoi who is going to work on Vietnamese, and the only way to do that is via GitHub. So the GitHub is kind of a given. Everything will kind of be there. Of course, I agree with Lasse about having a repository structure, because then you can have the tooling can be consistent and it will work on everything. Mm-hmm. So I kind of originally introduced that structure in my cleanup checklist, because the cleanup also involves how to deal with the previous directories and subdirectories. So if there are several versions in the previous directory, how to kind of consolidate all of them into a legacy folder and then create a version XXX, the new version folder, that was one of the approaches. But of course, we can come up with another standardized approach, which is not a version approach, because Git is like a version control thing. So having a subfolder that's called version something is redundant. So I guess that what I'm saying is that the standardization of the GitHub repository and stuff like that is something we should investigate in the next week. and especially because that's going to be a byproduct of the updates. But we also need to look at the upgrading to the plus character set, which is also like the basic upgrade. So the benchmark is the plus. That's the minimum we need to push it. So it's kind of a compromise between a deep dive and a GitHub.
I mean, I think that maybe I kind of I think that actually I see that as like the second level,
Okay.
because the most basic thing for me is that there's 200 bugs reported on GitHub, right? So there are some
Sure.
found where there are active problems that need to be fixed, and the most minimum thing to do is to just hot patch the binary TTF.
Okay.
And
Yeah, so I mean, so to kind of solve that problem, I was thinking that we'd spend a day or 2 days in a week on GitHub issues and the rest of the days on the standardization process.
yeah,
Or like we have a week sprint on the GitHub issues and then focus on the standardization process, because as I've perceived it, we kind of are looking to touch quite a lot of families, and I think the way to do it, I mean, the GitHub issues, of course, kind of address some major issues because there are things that are really breaking, and some of the GitHub issues might just get solved by doing the upgrades, right? By going over the upgrade.
well, yeah. I mean, the minimum thing is just like to fix the problem, like to hot fix it, and
Yeah.
there's no further organization. It's literally just fixing the problem. And then
Okay.
the next step up from that is to get the source files, get them into GitHub, fix the problem at root in the source file, and then um, push the newly generated binary to fix the problem. And then the third stage is that kind of 2-day process where the glyph set is extended to the plus set, because this is involving very little drawing. It's mainly just taking the accents, putting them into the combining mark glyph slots, running the generate glyphs script that generates all combining mark glyphs, that kind of stuff, right? There's this kind of 2-day process which Calapi has been and the others have been piloting, and then the next step is then like a sort of maybe 1 to 2 week process where things are being redrawn. Maybe the character set's being extended to a pro or expert set. And so I think that given that we've got like maybe 4 or 5 people working on this, that just hot fixing things is like kind of not worth doing. That's like too far down the returns graph. And we also have a problem at the moment. We're not able to push any updates into production at the moment anyway. So we have time to to get some stuff lined up to be pushed.
Can you hear me?
Very noisy.
There's some noise going on.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but that's like the laptop fan sucks.
Yeah, for sure. It's an old laptop. It's going to have lots of fan noise. Sorry. So I would just like to give an overview of how I see font bakery fitting into this workflow. I have run bakery on all of the fonts on the Google Fonts Git repository, which are all only binaries, right? So font bakery is focused on reporting the issues that we find on the binaries, and so I'm sure that at least it doesn't crash in any of the fonts in the repository because I've run them all. But then we had to improve the quality of the actual hotfixing, because we were not really focused on hotfixing a lot of things. We were more focused on reporting the issues so that the designers would apply the fixes. I understand the need for hotfixing, but I really don't like it, because I think the real solution is fixing the sources. So we still do not have checking on the sources, but I think it's the natural next step for the tool to provide automatic fixing of the source files. So I think I can have some input from you on that while you set up one reference family for hosting the sources on GitHub. Then we can start moving towards hotfixing source files as well. What do you think about that, Dave?
Well, I mean, I think the hotfixing is like, forget it. Like, basically, hotfixing functionality that's in Font Bakery is helpful because it means that we can have the source file and we can have a corrected TTF, and we can see that the binary that's generated from the source file is fixed. But I mean, I didn't even know if that's useful, because Font Bakery is just going to say there's an error, and then we run Font Bakery on the new file and there's no error. We don't need the hotfixing. We just don't need it. So I mean, I think I did say at some point, to just not bother about the hotfixing very much. Like, if it was already written, then bring it over from old code. But if you don't write any new hotfixing code.
Mm-hmm. No, but I mean hotfixing the source files. Patching the source files. Sorry, not
hotfixing. It's fixing.
Yeah, fixing the source file. So do you think we would? Do you think it would be good to have automatic fixes for the source files?
No.
No? And so the reporting should rather instruct the designer what to do to fix the sources?
Well, no. I mean, I think that we have a very small group of people, and so it would be nice to have Font Bakery do that. But I don't think that that's important right now. I think that we may want to have separate scripts. So, for example, there's a bunch of custom parameters for the Glyph file, the license and the license URL, and disable last changes. There's a bunch of custom parameters at the font level that should just be set for any Glyph file on GitHub that's got the open font license, and it's very easy to grep, literally just grep the text file and see if these strings are in there.
So even for source files, you think Font Bakery should focus on reporting, so generating reports of issues, both in the binary level and the source level, to guide the work?
Yeah, so I think that that we're inevitably going to be writing scripts that do that kind of thing. I think that probably what we'll do is we'll shut down Font Bakery as a thing, because it's over 3 years that hasn't really achieved what it set out to achieve, and over the last 6 months we've boiled it down to just one big long Python script and then a few other little tools, and then there is this other set of tools in github.com/google/fonts in the tools directory, where there's also a bunch of little Python utilities that the Google Fonts engineers have made. And then there's also the Noto tools GitHub project, where the Noto team have also made dozens of little Python scripts that do little things. And so I think that to me the ideal situation is to have the Font Bakery checking script in the moved to the Google Fonts repos tools directory, and to have Travis set up on that repo, and that every commit to that repo Travis is going to run font bakery on every TTF file in the repo, and all of them will be clean.
So you see Font Bakery as one component of a larger set of tools for testing.
What we've ended up with today is that Font Bakery is a Python script, and it checks TTFs, and that's like the primary, most valuable thing in there. And then there's a bunch of other little scripts which can tell you at the terminal, the vertical metrics of this set of fonts, which is somewhat useful. But that's mainly been valuable in the last 3 years, where it's been just me taking on, the QA checking and onboarding of these fonts. And I think that the vision over the 3 months is that we get all of the families, into much more of like a software development situation, where there are source files, there's a standardized build process that's documented, and the results of that are being checked, with a lint tool on every commit, and then those binaries are then going into the fonts repo, and those are being checked as well.
Yeah, that's pretty good, I think. That's the way to go.
Yeah,
continuous fonts.
Sorry?
Continuous font builds, pretty much.
Right, and so the the Glyphs format is just a text file. So some of these things you can just rep for the glyph names in the Glyphs file, and maybe there's a little bit of awk-sed style shell munging going on, but you end up with I'm pretty sure that we can have a Unix command that just lists all of the glyph names in a Glyphs file, and then we can have another Unix command that has a list of glyph names, and it runs diff, and then if the diff returns no output, then the font has all the glyphs defined, and if there are glyph names left, then it's broken.
You could write like a rudimentary parser for kind of like font tools, but for like a glyphs file, and
I think
do it.
there's one already.
So
okay, cool.
Font Tools has a glyphs lib, which does it. And so there's this effort from the Noto team to have a glyphs to UFO converter, and a UFO to Font Tools converter, and a cubic to quadratic converter, and that basically it will build from a glyphs file all of the OTF and TTF assets you need, all the way to a single GX TTF.
Amazing.
And those guys are actively developing that, so it's not totally ready for us. And so I don't want us to be blocked on it. And so at the moment we're going to be using Glyphs itself to do this, to do the building. And that allows designers to use all the advanced features in Glyphs that are not yet supported by the Glyphs lib. But the sort of maybe 2-year plan is that there'll be this free Python, pure Python build chain that supports UFO and glyph files, and is 100% or exceeds the build capabilities of Glyphs and RoboFont.
That's cool, but there's I was wondering if Glyphs can build fonts remotely. Like, do you have to open up the app to do it? Is there a way to get Georg to do this so it doesn't need to be run through an interface, so that you can just use it through like an API?
Command line tool or Python module or something like that.
Yeah, I think there is. There's this like Glyphs project file. But we'll have to ask him about that, or like post on the Glyphs forum.
So, I mean, if we got 800 fonts, there's no ways we can do this by hand opening the app with the thing. So it'd be lovely to have like either a Python thing or a command line thing. It doesn't matter. It'd be really good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he's done this.
Because really, with the whole makefile and build script, you'd want it so that there's no human interaction going from source to the final thing. So.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, so we can make a post on the Glyphs forum. I've made a note to do that. So I will get the Mercurial repository, up up on Bitbucket or something so you guys can grab all these VFBs. And I'll update the spreadsheet to have all of the names, emails, GitHub links, and I'll start reaching out to people. And then we can also classify each family with the glyph set that we think is appropriate. And we need to, take one family and sort of decide what the repo layout, should ideally be. And Kalapi mentioned there's this kind of redundancy, right, between different the designers are not very technically sophisticated, and so what they want is a folder structure with different versions over time, and they're using file save as their version control system. And that is probably not going to go away, sadly. That's just like how people want to work. They understand that there are more sophisticated version control systems available, and they're not particularly interested in learning them, and they grudgingly accept that they have to if they're going to get money from Google. So I'm definitely interested, in maybe we can say like there's a range of different kinds of ways you can set up the repo depending on how comfortable you are with being more sophisticated. So like the scope 1 repo, that's like there's no binaries in the repo, right? It's like the source files are there, there's a build script, and then there are Git tags for releases, and then binaries are attached to those releases in GitHub, and that's like the proper way of doing it. And then Pablo's, has a sources file, and then there's like an old version subdirectory which has all of the old versions, and then he has a fonts directory with copies of the binaries. In the ekmukta family on GitHub, they don't have the binaries themselves. They have TTX split files, so one file per table, and then that's really good because you can see as they update the binaries, you can see those diffs, of the XML. So the glyph table has obviously got loads of changes, and we kind of ignore that, but you can see that the metadata isn't changing where it shouldn't. So that's cool. On the other hand, it means that if you grab the repo, you don't get binary files that you can install or you can play with, and
This all sounds very dangerous.
What do you mean?
Well, if you have different folder layouts for different things, that often means you're going to have different scripts to manipulate those folders, so I'd prefer just having one set rigid set of folders, and maybe like
So I mean, convention over configuration, that's a popular theme, but I'm not sure to what extent we can dictate that, because we don't control the upstream repos. GitHub.com/impellari/LibreFranklin is under Pablo's control. And if we make a pull request that deletes all the old versions and says, here's a bunch of Git tags for the old versions when they were in place, he's just going to reject it because he acknowledges that he could be more sophisticated and he doesn't want that. So maybe we have a fontbakery.yaml file like a Travis or whatever file that configures those locations if they're different from our conventions.
So, sorry, let me just see if I'm understanding this correctly. We want to get everything with all the sources and all the stuff we've got into GitHub technically, yet those people have their own repositories for the fonts sometimes as well themselves.
Yes.
Surely you'd want a way where it could take their repository and pipe it into ours in a certain way and build it into a standardized layout.
We have github.com/Google Fonts as a GitHub organization, and we can certainly fork GitHub/Impellari/LibreFranklin to /Google Fonts/LibreFranklin, and then we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
But then, as Pablo updates his version, then we need to deal with resyncing that.
Sure, you could like some linking thing which links to his files in a certain way. kind of like system linking and like.
Well, I'm open to that. If you want to, look into Git and maybe there is like some clever way to do that, so that you can track his updates in a different directory layout.
Yeah.
What we could do is submodule and then symlinks or something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Okay.
I have no problem with people having files organized however they want them. However, if we're going to be manipulating them ourselves and we have copies to the thing, I'd want aliases to those files so that we can get them, and then we've got a nice directory where we all understand the format of how they work.
I think that Lasse's suggestion is nice. We have a Git submodule with the upstream, and so we have github.com/Google Fonts/ and then like the family name, like it is in the Google Fonts repo, in the Google Fonts API. That's quite nice. And then we can have a like a /upstream folder in the repo, and that's a Git submodule for the upstream, whatever it is, and then symlinks to the relevant files so that they have a conventional format, and then there's no configuration because the configuration is the symlinks. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds good. I understand the problem where you'd want people to work how they feel comfortable with, but I don't know if you guys would agree on this, but I'm a huge fan of just having a collection of things which are all similar in a similar structure, so to speak, so that if I need to do batch manipulations, I know there's going to be...
It's a Ruby on Rails principle, convention over configuration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's a good solution.
Well, we can try it. If it's not working out, we can think about something else. It's not that complicated.
Right. Okay, so Calliope, which families were the ones that you've worked on so far?
So I worked on Anton, Bevan, and Anaheim. They're all forks
and
on my GitHub repo. And Alpha Slab, yeah.
Okay.
But Alpha Slab is a raisin, so it's a long term.
Okay, right. But Anton, Bevan, and Anaheim are sort of done.
Yeah, I mean, they need Vietnamese, but they're done.
Right.
They've been updated to the plus. They have been the glyph naming has been updated. Everything has been done except for the Vietnamese.
Okay, so I think that maybe you guys can sort of take one of those each, and we can reconvene on Monday and sort of decide where things are at. Yeah, I mean, you guys. I mean, when do you want to formally start the project? Do you want to start on Monday? Do you want to start today? Do you want to start tomorrow? I mean.
Since it's Thursday, I think for me personally, I'm going to go with Monday.
Yeah.
I might maybe tomorrow just have a look at a few of the things we've just discussed, like this whole sim linking thing, and see if I can maybe get like a rough prototype working, or just not really, just have a look into these little problems more to see where it's going.
Yeah. Clappy's just posted the links to his repos, so yeah, that will be cool.
Okay.
I appreciate it. And that will give me a bit more time to get the the other things we discussed lined up. I guess the other thing I think may be worth discussing is the sort of vision for where we want to be in 3 months' time. So what are some of the things that we want to where we would like to have things? We talked about having like Travis on the binaries and the sources. And then we want like so a / Google Fonts repo for every family. So there will be upstreams, but we're gonna fork them into the Google Fonts. And so we would want to have a glyphs file which has been newly generated for every family. With the latest TTF author.
I think that a good goal would be to have the full set of fonts being generated without human intervention. I mean, no more binary catching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about sort of dashboards? So once we have, you know, 800 repos, we have stuff like PyFontaine to talk about like language support. You know, we've talked about having these like 4 glyph sets. You know, like there's the base, plus, pro, expert, and then there's the sort of relevant target for the family, and then there's what's remaining. You know, I talk, you know, very simply about like grepping the glyphs file. What other kinds of things, you know? Yeah, I mean, I think I would like to have that kind of dashboard.
Sorry, could you elaborate further by a dashboard? Do you mean as in like an application where you have the option to check files, or so like a user interface or something?
Let me share my screen again and show you the broken font bakery dashboard. So if you go to fontbakery.com, then you get a GitHub authentication, and then you get this Angular app, and it's configured to try and load a JSON file from hundreds of GitHub pages, sites, and then it shows, you know, the sort of build date, build status, a link to a build report, you know, tests passing, failing, auto fixing, errors, and you can see it's got like, you know, 800 families listed, and it's slowly paging them in. And then the idea is that you can go into one of these, and then it's going to show you, you know, along the top here, you can see it's going to show you a summary page, it's going to show you the setup details, you're going to see, you know, the checks that are run, you know, the log output, you know, any test results, metadata file, the description, and yeah, some kind of review page, I think, for a moment. And this is all broken, basically. You know, the people who were working on it, you know, obviously they did something, but yeah, they didn't really make anything work. So that was kind of, you know, the work I'd done maybe 2.5 years ago, and it hasn't. I mean, we've kind of kept it sort of working, but it basically doesn't work. So I think that, you know, looking back at the original intent behind that, and making something that does work, I think that would be good.
That's what I inherited code-wise.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a nice thing to have. It's sort of a gamification of the task of completing full support for a family, right? So I think that's nice because it lets you quickly see what's missing. But that's something we abandoned as it was broken, and we were focusing on getting the tool solid.
The core checking tool.
Yeah, the checking tool should be solid before focusing on the panel, but the panel is something I would like to have at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So this panel looks at a JSON file, which is a report of every repository, and then you are.
Back then. I mean, I'm not saying that has to be the way that it's done. That was
Recently, we changed that to just a GitHub Markdown syntax, so that it's just a report instead of feeding data into the panel. But we still have the capability to generate JSON, so it's just a matter of rewiring something similar to that. We just didn't focus on the panel because we wanted to make the checking tool solid.
Yeah. So I'm sharing my screen here. You can see that we have this brief file that tries to set out, the design brief for the product. And so the first thing is, about checking files, and then the second thing is about checking the files as a family, and then the third thing is generating the other files required for Google Fonts, and then rechecking that all of those are in sync. And then a possible next stage would be comparing the stuff that's in production to the new thing. Although at the moment, my method for doing that is to look at the differences in the Impalari page and to look at the TTXs. So that can definitely be improved. And the Noto team have made a tool called Noto Diff, which starts to standardize and automate that kind of process. And so then there is this idea of having a web dashboard. There's ideas about having these kinds of checks for the Glyphs files or UFOs or whatever. There's some stuff about how to deploy a font bakery sort of standard Travis setup. But the main focus of the work has really just been on this, the check TTF part of things. And so this is covered sort of, section, down to section 2.5. That's kind of as far as we got with the Lipo. So the stuff that exists already down here for like source management checking, dashboards and stuff. I mean, I've already considered that abandoned. From my point of view, it's a reference and we're starting from scratch.
For this to really work, you'd need this so it was all hooked up to some continuous integration cycle so that the Git repos can technically build fonts and then be able to generate a report, which will then be able to go into the dashboard so that you could kind of like almost not have a real time, but like say every 6 hours get an update of where everything is. But then you'd also need your tests in place and all the other stuff and standardize to get it there.
Yeah, it's a big project. It's a big project.
It relies on a lot of bits to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. That's a vision for your 3 months. I'm taking it as well.
Well, I mean, so maybe it's not for 3 months. Maybe all we can do in 3 months is get all of the source files into Glyph. Yeah. What I'm saying we can do in 1 month, maybe that's going to take 3 months. Maybe we're not going to write any scripts whatsoever, and we're all just going to be copying files, DFB to Glyphs, doing stuff by hand, right?
We need a pipe for this.
Well,
I'm going to do some mega plumbing here.
but yeah, so I think that in terms of getting things set up so that we can really start moving on Monday when you really start on this, I need to get you guys the VFB Mercurial repository because that's like our raw material, and I need to get the contact details for everyone so that either we are clear to move forwards and we know that we have the latest versions of everything or not. And then yeah, we need to define, I think, take these three families, Anton, Anaheim, and Bevan, and try and do a depth piloting with them. I think that's a good goal for the next week. So something I think maybe I mentioned last week. So Lasse has already made a sort of like Glyph support checking web app.
Well, like this diffing tool, like the chive set inspector thing.
Yeah. Where is it? Let's see. Yeah, so you can drop a file or a font file or a name file here, and then so you can drop the character set and then a font, and it will show you the difference, right?
Yeah, it will tell you if something's missing or whatever. Do you have it on your screen, Dave?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I had. Yeah, let me just share it. Yeah, so here's the GitHub repo, and then there's some examples. So oops, that's the file. Yeah, so there's a legend, you can hide it, and then you drop a name file on this side, oops, and then you can drop a font file on this side, and it will show the difference. And I think you have a preset version, right? So this version,
I don't know what I have, actually. It's been a while. Yeah, this is something, I think. Blue is kind of okay. Green is surplus, and red would be... Okay, so blue is surplus, and green is matches on both sides.
and then there's an example with a font preloaded. So yeah, so this is required but not provided. Bad. So then it looks like we're missing some stuff.
Right, in the example.
In the example.
Correct. Yeah, it draws always the whole, tries to render the whole Unicode block if a glyph is present in there.
Right.
I don't know, that's basically everything it does. What we could do still is maybe draw the glyphs themselves, because right now it's just the...
Right. But yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing I think which is more like, this is like a leaf page that in the font bakery, we had these things along the top, right? And so this would be like one of those things, like in review, you would have maybe this kind of glyph table style analysis. And that, yeah.
So yeah, if you for example say this font should be Google Plus character set, you could just have it automatically there. And the font, don't know, with a get parameter or something configured, so you could just make links for every font to just show
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you know, with Font Bakery on the table here, the idea, is that we have this table that shows for every family, you could have like each glyph set and a percentage, and that rather than having an actual dashboard, we can just use the spreadsheet to mock that up.
There's actually one thing when I wrote that thing is that it's not a glyph set inspector, it's a char set inspector.
Mm-hmm.
Like it takes Unicode code points, which are chars, and inspects them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, sometimes it would be more useful to have glyph set inspector in a way.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you have, like if you're doing your Arabic in a modern fashion, you don't have every possible Arabic glyph encoded, just the few that you need as to trigger your OpenType features to come in, and then you don't know if your font is complete just by looking at the Unicodes.
Yeah.
It's kind of a thing that tool does not do, whatever. Yeah, I don't know how to. Problem is then again with Arabic, for example, or whatever stuff that pulls a lot of glyphs out of like the features, is that's not really standardized or whatever. Everybody writes his own OpenType features for that stuff, so that's hard to standardize, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that I mean, I think that character set compliance is more important than glyph set compliance, because there is going to be that kind of variation design by design. But then there's this kind of midway thing where we know that we're going to want certain glyphs. Certainly at the source level, we're expecting to have these Vietnamese glyphs for Vietnamese variant accents. So, I mean, yeah, to me, it's like this thing of stages, right? Levels. Yeah, so is there anything else? Because I've got to get going. I'm gonna get kicked out of this room in 10 minutes.
I don't know. I think we should try to stick close together and try to figure out how to best get going. But I'm pretty positive with that. And then try to, so that we are all on the same page, stuff like that. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine. I mean, we need to still define what we're going to do, but in the micro level. But yeah, I think we can start defining that by doing some of the stuff. So.
We'll figure it out. So I think I would join Mark and just officially start on Monday. So I can still wrap up some stuff. And if there's anything we should take a look at, I mean, I can do this basically always. So just let the links come in.
No, I don't think there's anything much more to review. There's still there's some extra things. Felipe, has been working on to improve like the test coverage of Font Bakery binary checking. I think that's just going to continue. We have these Anton, Bevan, and Anaheim fonts, which are basically complete, except for the Vietnamese. I think that's a good point at which our tools, or whatever, I'll set up and say like this font isn't completely ready. So that's cool. I don't know. I mean, Clappy, what are your plans for the next few days?
I was going to update the 3 with regards to the Vietnamese support since Nuong is not available, and finish them so that I can fill the blanks in the cleanup checklist as to what to do post-production.
Okay, that sounds good.
That was what was on my plate.
Yeah. Okay, well then I think that also works well. There's plenty of other things that will not be complete. So.
Yeah. So I'm already working on Anton. So I think the other two of you can choose between Anaheim and Bevan.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe so that there's no duplication of work.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's. I don't think that Lasse and Mark are going to be really boring me.
Yeah.
But if we just have one family that's done end to end, and then the other 2 are still work in progress, I think that's good.
No, I mean by Monday I'll have all 3 of them, so they can have all 3 on Monday.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Nice talking to you. Nice meeting all of you guys.
Nice seeing you in Calliope. For Monday, I'm going to try and give this sim linking thing a go. So I'm going to take like a Pablo repo and all different repos and see if I can come up with some like a congruent thing from their files, but not duplicate them, but just link to them, so to speak.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll be on this Hangout, I think, so we can maybe just chat about what we're doing.
Cool.
Okay. See you guys later. Bye.
See you, Calliope. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.